where is the automotive industry going 15 years in the future? Maybe like the 5 key highlights that apply to the industry in general. Now you've got my curiosity piqued.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest learning from the whole project was going back to the drawing board and thinking about why did we create the cars in the first place. A lot of times, if you look at products, just the products, industrial products, we have developed so many things that have caused humongous amount of waste. And why is that? It's because we created the solutions first, and then we started thinking about, oh, are people even going to use it? Designers have been here for a very long time. Let's just address that. They have been called different things. They have done things differently, but the world wouldn't look like this if people were not designers, even if they didn't call themselves that.
Welcome back to Innovation Impossible. In each episode of this podcast, we dive deep into the world of product innovation, bringing you insightful conversations with industry leaders behind some of the coolest products in fields as diverse as smart devices, crypto, fashion, logistics, pharmaceuticals, and many more. Our guests share their processes, challenges, and triumphs in creating groundbreaking products. From who to hire to the systems they create at enterprise companies, from research methodology to marketing, from innovation frameworks to the challenges they faced and how they overcame them. Whether you're a serial entrepreneur working at an enterprise company on an insights or innovation team, you're a product designer, or you just love product design and innovation, Innovation Impossible offers practical lessons and inspiration to help you navigate your own product development journey. Today on Innovation Impossible, we're joined by Harsh Wardhan, a design-led innovation expert who's spent his career shaping products at the intersection of creativity, strategy, and emerging tech. From iconic brands like Mustang and Bronco at Ford, to leading AI-driven workshops and programs, innovation programs at Google, Harsh helps Fortune 500s turn fuzzy problems into real-world solutions. Today, we're diving deep into his experience at the front end of innovation, how he blends design thinking with emerging cutting-edge AI, the frameworks behind his Idea DJ method, and how to unlock great ideas faster. Harsh, welcome to Innovation Impossible.
Dan, thank you so much for having me. I know we have been going back and forth, but I have been excited about this conversation. So it's really good to be here as a guest on the Innovation Impossible podcast. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Harsh. Before we dive into some of the methods and frameworks that you've been working on, I'd love to hear your story, how you ended up working at this intersection of design, innovation, AI. What's the Harsh story?
So anything I say or speak about in this conversation is based only on my opinions, and it does not represent any company that I have worked for or am working for right now. I started my career as an architect. So I used to be a registered architect back in India, and that was my introduction to formal design. And from architecture, I got into UX design out of interest and curiosity. You know, in architecture, you learn a lot of different things, and then um, I always say this, that for an architect, the world is their oyster, because then you can, because how you have been trained, you can choose to be in architecture or refine your skill sets in other areas and apply what you have learned to become something else entirely. And I did that. I got into UX, and then I came to United States to further refine my skills, pursuing a higher degree, and that's how I got into design and design innovation, design thinking, using design as a way to solve business challenges, thinking about new products, all of that. I went to the IIT Institute of Design for a master's, and that's in Chicago. And then I joined Ford. Ford had an innovation team in multiple different geographies. One of them was their headquarter location, which is Dearborn. I worked for Ford for a few years and working on some really interesting brand names and projects and products, futuring projects which are really close to my heart. And then I moved to Google, and inevitably working at Google got me close to AI solutions. That's the area of my work, and today what I do is, like you said, it's an intersection of design thinking, innovation, and AI.
Okay, that's very interesting. Something I don't talk about much as well. I also came up through architecture, and I guess there's something about that in this innovation, products, something about that design thinking. And I kind of want to unpack that term as well, because you said it a few times, design thinking. And I feel like a lot of people who aren't involved in design, products, innovation, they'll see design, it's like a visual thing, graphic design, web design, maybe product design, but like how it looks, it's a visual thing. But design is more than that, as is architecture. Like there was this quote, I think it was John Ruskin, this idea of, what was it? Jack of all trades, but master of none. You know, you got to know a little bit about everything and how it all comes together to make the best solution for that problem. How are you designing in that space? So yeah, could you unpack what is this design thinking and how do you apply it?
Yeah. First of all, I want to address that quote 100%. As an architect, like I said, you learn a lot of different things, and you have to, because you are working on a massive scale, and then you have to zoom in to a really small detail, and then you have to zoom out again. So to work in that scale, you develop this sense, you develop this your own process, and that's what you were hinting at. So architects do tend to become generalist in a lot of areas, and similarly in design, if you look at what traditionally the design has been understood as, which is, I would say, the creative design or functional design, how we would usually think about it. Whenever you tell people that, whenever I tell people that, oh, I work in design, they immediately think about, oh, this guy makes things beautiful. Well, and then they ask me, oh, UX or industrial? And while my background is in UX, I don't work as a UX designer anymore. I work as a design strategist, innovation strategist, or simply put, a design innovator, design led innovator. And what that means is that I use the design process, design methodology, and I apply that to business challenges. And speaking of the methodology or the process, designers forever have been designers have been here for a very long time. Let's just address that. They have been called different things, they have done things differently, but the world wouldn't look like this if people were not designers, even if they didn't call themselves that. So there's a process to the madness. Um, and there's a very good book written by one of my professors called Vijay. His name is Vijay Kumar. He was a professor of design at IIT Institute of Design, Chicago, and in his past 40 years of work, he has codified this process and this methodology, and he has written that book. And if you read through it, if you try to apply that, you will realize that he has codified it into a science, and that's how we look at design process. um, if I had to put it into one sentence, I would say design thinking is a user-centered methodology to solve challenges. Now, just to refine that a little bit, we also say a human-centered. So it's about human values, human aspirations, human needs, not human wants. That's a different thing. Want might be different than need. Um, or in the current context, we would say humanity centered approach or humanity centered methodology. So, design thinking in its um, essential form is a humanity centered approach to solve problems. That's
Nice. And that was, did you say 101 design methods? What was the book's name?
101 design methods by Professor Vijay Kumar.
Okay, we'll link that down in the description in case anybody wants to see it. Um, and something else you mentioned, this front end of innovation. It's a very sexy term. I'm hearing it a lot, but what is it? What does it actually mean? What does it look like? How forward facing are you going? And could you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, front end of innovation, or sometimes we call it fuzzy front end, is, like the name says, is that early creative process in the phase of any creating a new product or creating a product or solving any problem or challenge. Whenever we start the process with this fuzzy idea, with this ambiguous, from this ambiguous place, that is what the front end of innovation, that's where it activates. It's the initial conceptualization. Even before concept, actually it starts before that. It starts with sensing intent, understanding the context, conceptualization, and ideation. All of that comes into the front end of innovation process.
Okay. And could we maybe take an example? It doesn't need to be from one of the brands you've worked at, but just like what would that look like looking forward for that business, for that brand? And then what are you coming up with in the process?
So yeah, most definitely. Let's try. Let me try to explain this using an example where we could apply this. So think about a large automotive manufacturing company. And this company has certain vehicle lines, but they also have a product that has been here for, say, half a century, and it has been one of the most popular brands and one of the best product lines that the company has ever produced. And today, they are trying to understand what the future of this brand is going to be, say, 15 years down the line. And today the world is changing so fast with the latest technology that we have, that we don't even know how we are going to be down the line 15 years, or we can't even predict anything at this point, or predict or
15 years? What is it? AI, even now, next year, AI, self driving cars, flying cars, I don't know. Yeah. Uber, all of these other services and everything that's coming out around it. No, I imagine people's ideas about driving, the city is changing as well. It's not just the technology.
yeah, exactly. And when you have been a successful producer of a vehicle in a certain way for half a century, how do you reimagine that whole brand? You go back to the drawing board. It's a very ambiguous place to be, because you want that brand to live on and not just die because nobody wants to use it anymore. And in this case, we would not start by looking at what we already have. We would start by understanding where the world is moving. We would start by studying that. We would start by doing trend analysis. We would start by sensing intent of people, how their values, how their aspirations are changing. In this particular case, we would go back and study the newer generations and what do they think about such a product. For example, if we think about Gen Zs and alphas of the world, they don't even want to think about moving in the context of a car. They think about um, they think about mobility as just moving from point A to point B, which is the definition of mobility. So for them, going from point A to point B can be done in many different ways. You mentioned the ride hailing services. They could take public transport. Uh, they could use a completely different form of transportation, which is not as expensive or, in their view, damaging to the environment. So what does all of this signal mean for the future of this brand? And this is just one aspect. We this this is the changing behavior of upcoming generation. Then there is also something that we talked about in this context, is technology. So electric vehicles, self-driving vehicles, we have flying cars coming around. And then we are still just talking about Two things. There's a very good framework that I urge the listeners to look at. It's called STEEP. If you have not only already if you don't already know this, STEEP stands for social, technological, environmental, economical, and political. This is the landscape you need to look at to understand where the world is going, and based on that, you can think about how your product should be designed, or how you should be innovating in the domain that you are leader in, or even want to start in, even for startups. Sometimes Steep is also used as a different framework called Pestle, where L stands for legal. So
Yeah, that's super fascinating. And that really reminds me of what drew me to architecture in the first place. I can kind of see what led to your transition as well, because I never liked those assignments that were just kind of design this apartment or design this house, and they're not really giving you any context. I like the architecture, the urban design that kind of considers the history, the social aspect, how people are moving through the space, how the sun moves, the temperature throughout the year, the rainfall, the waterfall, kind of trying to think of everything together and how to place that design within that larger context that you have, you know? You're not just designing for yourself, for the technology, or even for, I don't know, say a set of users or a pain point. There's so much more happening, especially when I guess you're thinking about 15 years into the future, the front end of innovation. You have to really consider all of this, like the building, because you're building a building. That's not a 1 year product. That's 15 years, 100 years, 500 years. How's that going to stand the test of time? No?
and that's you bring up a fascinating point that is so critical in front end of innovation, or whenever you are trying to do a white space project, or trying to solve for a fuzzy hairy ball, big world level problem, is that the context is so important. When you start working on a new project, whatever scale that is, it's really important to start by sensing the intent of what we are even trying to do. You sense intent at the beginning, you understand the context, and then start your learning journey. We have not even come to ideation. Then you start your learning journey, and then keep refining your intent. Because before you want to start thinking about ideas and concepts and what you could do, you have to think about, are we even solving for the right problem? So one of the big critical steps in design thinking process, or design process, or design led innovation process, is framing or reframing, so that we reframing the problem, so that we make sure that we are solving for the right problem. Because if we are not solving for the right problem, um, we are going to spend a tremendous amount of time and effort. And in the context of big companies, large companies, you are going to waste a million or maybe billions of dollars.
That reminds me of something that Jeff Barry was saying in a previous episode of Innovation Impossible. I'll link it up here somewhere, about how a lot of these car companies, when they're thinking about innovating, they're thinking about the problem of electrifying their fleet, electrifying their vehicles. And he was saying that that's the wrong problem. They've framed it the wrong way. The problem isn't how do we electrify our vehicles. The problem is how do we reduce our carbon emissions, of which electrification is one of the solutions. But once you kind of reframe the problem as how do we reduce our emissions, how do we make ourselves more environmentally friendly, all of a sudden a whole host of other solutions opens up. He was talking about changing the way they cool their trucks, I don't know, diesel engines, things like that, which don't necessarily have to do with electrification. All of a sudden, a host of new solutions opens up.
That's a fantastic example of how people think at the front end, the fuzzy front end, the ambiguous beginnings, when they are trying to get to the right intent of even thinking about the solution, let alone the problem, trying to identify the right problem. That's a fantastic story. Even so, I'll give you one more very similar, and this is in the public domain, so I can talk about it. And I'm, by the way, I'm no way associated to this company, but there's a self-driving company which is very popular, and they are pretty much the leaders right now in the market when you think about self-driving. Do you want to take a guess?
In the US, who? No, you go. I know who it is, but it's not coming to my
So
tongue yet.
it's Waymo.
Waymo, yeah, yeah.
It's an alphabet company, and they have launched their services in a couple of different cities, San Francisco being one, the Bay Area, as well as Phoenix. So it's people look at that company as a self-driving mobility company. But when they started back in 2009, mobility was not the problem that they were trying to solve. They were not trying to create a self-driving car. They were trying to solve for the accidental deaths, the untimely deaths that happen on the road due to driver error. So what they were trying to solve was for safety on the roads, out of which a solution is a self-driving car. Now that's the story I have heard, but it completely makes sense, right? It's similar to what you just said.
Yeah, yeah. I also love these terms that you're using. Fuzzy front end of innovation, hairball ideas. It sounds like a very playful field as well. I love the creativity that goes in it.
White space problems.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder, is there anything you could share from the research, the thinking that went into what were the results, the outcomes of this automotive 15 years in the future? Where is the automotive industry going 15 years in the future? Maybe like the 5 key highlights that apply to the industry in general. Now you've got my curiosity piqued.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest learning from the whole project was going back to the drawing board and thinking about why did we create the cars in the first place, and that is to move. And the whole idea about the mindset shift around mobility, if you think about it, so this is very interesting for me because before any of that happened, any of that project happened, back in 2019 time frame, we had done a sponsored project, and this is before Ford. We had done a sponsored project with an IT tech giant from India, and their project was even it had an even wider scope. It was called the future of mobility. And working on this project, and at that time I was still pursuing my graduate degree, and while the project was sponsored, it wouldn't end up in a product. It was an exploratory project. So a lot of things that we had come up at that point of time, our research started surfacing the same things. So whenever we do so, and future of mobility, for that we had to go back to the drawing board to think about what does mobility even mean. It's the idea of moving from point A to point B, as simple as that. So if you think about future of mobility, my question to you, my friend, is in future, are we even going to move? Is that going to be a thing? We both of us are sitting in a different part of the world right now because technology lets us do that now. 15 years ago, if we had to do this podcast, how much money would we have to spend on the satellite communications or right internet, this level of video transmission and audio? Or we would have probably gone to a studio to do that, or met in a place. So mobility at that time was different. Mobility right now might mean just be showing up on a video call. So this rethinking of what the first intent of the whole thing was, going back to that, I think that was a big outcome of this research and project. So we started there, then we started looking at how the behaviors of the upcoming generations are changing across these different landscapes. From there, we started thinking about um, okay, so then what would that we started connecting the dots that with these behavioral changes, with these technological advancements, with this first principle idea of first principle thinking of mobility, how do we connect the dots with this brand which has stood for so and so things to come up with a new product or a new service, or whatever the future of the brand is.
That's insane. Like, yeah, the future of mobility is one of those like almost painful questions. Like I'm trying to think of it on my like ask myself these questions sometimes about why am I don't know, this job, is this really what I want to be doing? And you kind of start analyzing, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And it uncovers this painful truth, no? And this is
Yeah.
doing that for the brand, like saying we've been manufacturing cars for 100 years. Let's stop, because the world isn't going to need them in 10 years or like, but you can't keep going manufacturing cars and ignore that truth. You have to really know, let's really consider this. And where does that mean we will be in 10, 15 years? What can we be providing our customers, I guess?
So I'm a huge frameworks and methods guy because I keep bringing them up, and they really provide a structure. So in short, I'm a fan of these frameworks and methods, and you brought up a really good one which is used in the business and research. 5 whys. So to get to the core of any problem, keep asking, why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Now, do you do it with yourself in your own context? That's great. When you do it with the customers or when you do it with the users, it's very annoying. But after that fifth why, it's you are going to get to the core of the problem.
This episode is brought to you by prelaunch.com, the consumer and product validation platform. Why trust your innovation to market research dinosaurs who still rely on professional panelists to gather insights that you'll probably never use? When you pay your respondents to participate, their only incentive is to get through it fast and get paid. This practice has led to the growth of professional respondents, low-quality responses, and even bots. Instead, on prelaunch.com, your future customers pay you before sharing their insights. Regular users discover your product via ads while browsing the internet, and if they actually want to buy it, they can place a small deposit to reserve it. This confirmation of purchase intent changes everything. Now, instead of straight lining through the answers in order to get paid, they're actually invested in your product development process. Their only goal is to co-create a better product for themselves. Prelaunch.com lets you test everything from pricing to product features, business models, audiences, messaging, positioning, and everything in between. Discover how you can gather bulletproof insights from your ready-to-buy customers on prelaunch.com today. Interesting. And then, so now let's get into some of these frameworks. You keep mentioning them. There's this idea DJ framework that I've heard you speak about. What is it? How does it work? Can you maybe run us through? I'm sure it's like a big workshop, maybe a couple of days, but maybe like a speed run through the idea DJ.
So this is not a framework specifically. This is a way to work with generative AI tools and making the outcomes become even more useful, and especially when you are thinking about exploratory ideation. Um, this is a method that I've come up with my partner Prapti Jha, and we have created this workshop called AI as a thinking partner, and Idea DJ is a part of that whole gamut of different methods and tools. And this is a really interesting one, so it's fun to talk about and use. And I'll suggest you try it after the conversation. So, what is Idea DJ? Idea DJ, as the name suggests, it has to do something that DJs do. They mix things up. Um, for example, in music in the context of music, they would mix two seemingly very different type of music together to come up with something that people might not have thought about. And that is what is at core of this method of utilizing Idea DJ. So, for example, if you are using any generative AI tool of your choice, whether it is ChatGPT or say Gemini or whatever you like to use, when you are trying to come up with new ideas for anything, try to mash things up. I'll give you a fun example. How do you use a banana to start a political campaign? Is this something that will come to your mind when you're thinking about either of them?
No, definitely not.
But try to mash them. And this is one thing that generative AI does very well is spark ideas. Now, there's a danger in using the generative AI tools a lot is that people start delegating their thinking, and that is not what the intent is. The intent is to spark ideas. And while doing something like this, like using banana to start a political campaign might sound weird or might sound completely um, a waste of time for some people. But if you start doing such things, um, the ideation becomes much stronger. The number of ideas that you can come up with, it's basically like a spark. Now, this was a random example I gave, but think about we were talking about future of automotives. Now, there's the one of the new, not new in the sense of the term itself, but there have been a lot of advancements in quantum computing. Now, if an automotive manufacturer is thinking 15, 20 years ahead, maybe that is something that people can start sparking ideas about. What does quantum computing mean for automotive industry? So I'm not saying that generative AI is going to do the thinking for you, but it will certainly spark good ideas. So that's the method that we use a lot.
I like that. At one of these conferences I recently went to, somebody was talking about how they include all of their patents and all of the user problems, and then they let AI kind of find ideas that match the two together. It's kind of using AI just as a jumping off point. Give us a list of 100 ideas, and then we can refine them. But I also like this idea DJ thing. I think I might start it with my team, just as like a mental exercise. Because you're right, there's a lot of things that we delegate to AI now. And I always try to be very conscious of, make sure that I'm writing things as well, that I'm not just getting AI to write all my content, because writing is very important for me. But also this ideation, coming up with ideas. And I feel like this is a very good exercise just to get your brain thinking. The idea of the banana and the political campaign, you have to, like, I don't know, analyze it a little bit and come up with a weird original solution. It gets
Yeah.
the brain working in a different way.
Yeah, 100%. It helps you to break the mold. That's what it does. Like people keep saying that, to be innovative, you have to think out of the box. And thinking out of the box is not easy when you have a 9 to 5 or a day job that where you are expected to do a certain thing a certain way. Thinking out of the box is not easy. So the tools like these are really helpful to be able to do that, to at least start the engine.
Okay, and so you developed that idea, DJ, as part of a larger framework with your colleague. And I've heard you also work with a lot of big companies. They come to you with challenges at this front end of innovation, design thinking. So what kinds of problems, what kinds of challenges are these companies coming to you with?
So, in the domain that I work in, whether you call it front end of innovation or design led innovation, usually these companies are asking about is that what should be our first steps towards something that we want to explore? Where do we start? And how do we make sure that we are moving in the right direction? And that is why everything I explained about front end of innovation, that is sensing the intent, understanding the context, getting into deeper research to understand human behaviors. All of that becomes very important for working with these companies because they are in an exploratory mode. They are, most recently, if you think about any part of the world, and this is again a very common thing that we are seeing that pretty much every company wants to work in the domain of AI. They want to do something with AI, right? Think of like this reminds me of the dot com era where companies were just slapping a dot com to their name and then it was a new company. So pretty much everybody wants to do that today.
But they don't know what, and so they're coming to you for you to tell them what to do with AI?
Yeah, exactly. They would say, what should we do with AI? And then to them, I ask, um, before what? Why should you do anything with AI?
Yeah. That's
So
the wrong question. You need to reframe it, no?
yeah, yeah, exactly. What's the intent behind using the AI? So then we go back to the drawing board, and just like I had explained in my example, you would think about what are your actual challenges, because AI or generative AI is not a hammer that you apply to every tool. It's a very good resource. So not a hammer that you use to solve every problem. Um, you understand the problem first and use generative AI as a resource and see if it is even applicable in the problem.
I like that. That feels like a common problem. I can imagine a lot of companies having now joining this AI bandwagon. How can we use AI? We have to use AI. And it's like that electrification problem, like, do we need to be electrifying these vehicles, or should we be, I don't know, thinking about the carbon emissions? How do we reframe that problem? Um, are there any other things that these companies get wrong about innovation, or that you have to kind of really teach them? Because I'm thinking, especially if it's very future facing, are these companies expecting returns now? Like, how can I apply this next year? How can I apply this next month? If you're telling me this is what's going to happen in 10 years, what does that mean for me now?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So if you think about what we have seen in the last few years, what has happened, that advancement of technology has been predominantly led by artificial intelligence. And even in the domain of artificial intelligence, it has been led by the generative AI generative AI tools, generative AI models, and on the other hand, what enables them, which is the chips and the hardware. So the tool has become readily available, the hardware is there, and people are pumping in a lot of money, and the technology has been never faster than what we are seeing, and it's accelerating at such a fast pace. So everybody wants the results to also come fast. So the timelines, the futuring timelines that we used to have 5 years, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, they have really shrunk into 2 years, 3 years. What can we get out of this in next year, in the next 1 or 2 year? That's one of the things that I'm seeing, um, and that puts us in a risk of um, solving for the wrong challenges, and not being intentional in what we are trying to do. So this is my urge to anyone who is in a position of developing new solutions for the world. Think about, are you solving a right problem or not? That's one thing. The other thing is that with technology, something I already mentioned, technology is such an enabler in the past, say, 50 years. It has become such an enabler that we think we have developed a habit of thinking about solutions first. And a lot of times, if you look at products, just the products, industrial products, we have developed so many things that have caused humongous amount of waste. And why is that? It's because we created the solutions first, and then we started thinking about, oh, are people even going to use it?
And I mean, I see that in things like phones, but even like, especially household appliances. I always think about that, like fridges, washing machines, dishwashers. The problem's being solved. I don't know what the next innovation is meant to bring, what the next technology. Are you really solving something new for the user? Maybe it could be something larger. Are you saving water, the environment, things like that? Maybe. But just coming up with new tech and saying, "Oh, now you can talk to your washing machine." Is that really a problem people were having, or are you just kind of trying to stuff AI into your dishwasher?
Exactly. I recently purchased a robot vacuum cleaner for my home, and I went into a rabbit hole researching for it, because these robot vacuum cleaners have sensors and cameras that are used to detect your home, and I wanted one which does not capture any images. So what I came across was this latest cutting edge, most expensive vacuum cleaner that not only had camera and sensors, it had microphones so that you could talk to it, like you said, and it was running Gen AI models so that you could talk to it and ask it to go to a certain area in your house to clean it up. I can't imagine, uh, like, it's hard for me to fathom anyone doing that. Maybe a couple of users, but talking to your vacuum cleaner, is there even a need for that? You are wasting such good generative AI models on a vacuum cleaner.
And engineers and thinking and money, everything that goes into it, like, isn't there a better problem that could be solved with all of that manpower?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm looking at those things too. So I'm renovating my apartment now. I've pulled out all the walls and everything, and I'm prototyping, creating my own sensors, and I'm trying to make it all off grid. So it'd be great. Like, I was thinking, this idea, DJ, and your frameworks and everything. I wonder if we could do a future episode at some point with some of these things that I'm prototyping and tinkering around with, and maybe our viewers can see, like this in action. How does it look like from idea or problem to finished product, brand, or whatever it is?
Yeah, we could do a part two of this where we could go through the design led innovation process, but just using AI. That would be a fun experiment. While I don't recommend people doing that for the actual work, it's like a fun exercise, but that has a danger of delegating your thinking. But as an exercise to show people what the process is like and things that we go through to create new products, we can definitely do that. That would be fun.
And aside from like this mashing ideas together, what other ways are you seeing like AI is changing design thinking, or not so much the technology itself, but the thinking, the methods that you use? How is AI influencing your work?
Yeah, that's a great question because AI is, and when we say AI, I just want to make sure that the audience understands that AI is a huge domain. Inside AI, there is deep learning, and then inside deep learning, we have generative AI, which is using the neural models. And we are today, when we say AI, we are usually talking about generative AI because that has seen huge advancements. And those are the tools that we are using, like ChatGPT and Perplexity and others. So generative AI it's fundamentally changing the way that we work. And we might realize it, we might not realize it, but it is going to change a lot of a lot of different types of jobs that are out there. It is going to change a lot of ways that industries have functioned in the past few decades or even half a century. And it will also have its impact on the field of design or design-led innovation. In my work specifically, in the domain of design, one of the things that we used to do and which used to take a lot of time was to identify patterns. So like I mentioned before in the conversation, in the front end part, you do a ton of research to understand the context and sense intent and understand user behaviors. As part of that research, you are collecting humongous amounts of data. And in that data, there used to be a very tedious task of tagging the codes. There used to be a very tedious task of identifying the patterns across different sources of data, which we called synthesizing the data with LLMs, which stand for large language models that we have in the Gen AI tools. That time frame, that amount of time and effort we used to spend synthesizing all of that data before we could analyze it, that has become very short. That is one of the, I think, one of my biggest use cases today to analyze and to synthesize and then analyze uh, humongous amounts of data using these AI tools. So as you can see, because of these tools, the amount of time you spend on these projects, at least in the front end, can be reduced. So process becomes a little bit faster. And this is going to happen in a lot of different types of work.
Yeah, we see that at pre-launch as well. We're using AI to summarize thousands of survey responses. So we have all of the survey responses, raw responses, people can see them. But then we have that layer of AI that kind of correlates, finds the correlations between the responses, finds the patterns, analyzes, and tries to find the sentiment and things like that, which would have taken consumer researchers and insights professionals ages to do before. We're just speeding up that process now. And I wonder, outside of AI, what other trends are you watching closely now, whether that's in tech, maybe consumer behavior, innovation mindsets?
Some of the biggest trends that we are seeing today is in the realm of technology, right? Even if we don't talk about AI, we have, I mentioned this before, quantum computing coming up, autonomous technology, which is again related to AI, that's coming up. New ways of transportation are being developed in response to what we have done for past 100 years. All of that is there from a technology and industrial perspective. But I also want to talk about the shift in behaviors and how people's mindsets are changing, and especially post COVID. Um, and this is something that we had started seeing signals back in 2020 as part of my work that I mentioned, is that people are becoming more and more um, aware. Maybe awareness is the wrong word. Maybe more and more, trying to find the right word, accountable. They have started becoming more and more responsible and holding themselves accountable for sustainability. And sustainability it has become such a buzzword in the past 2 decades, but now we are seeing people actually making behavioral changes to be more sustainable, to the environment and to their context and to the people around them. And this shift in mindset is very important to look at, because if you start becoming responsible and holding yourself accountable for anything, you start demanding that.
From the companies that you're buying things from.
Exactly. So these people, these human beings who are becoming more and more sustainable in their own ideas, they are going to ask for the same thing from the company, and we are seeing that there's a demand from the consumers coming to the companies, and then, I mean, it percolates in the industry. What are you doing today to make sure that um, future generations are safe? So that is a huge shift that we are seeing. And like I said, we started seeing this signal back in 2020, but post COVID, that has just accelerated um, beyond what we had thought of in such a short amount of time. And then the other thing is that as things become more are becoming more uncertain due to um, where the world is shifting and the things that are happening across the world, this idea of um, this mental model of being present in today is also something that's a behavior shift that we are seeing.
It's crazy how these things are changing. I can remember, like, I feel like I'm a pretty sustainability conscious person. I'm a hiker. I love nature and things like that. My sister is 7 years younger than me. We both studied in the UK. Uh, in that 7 year span of time between me finishing university, her starting, there were electricity companies that now you can buy purely renewable energy from them. They only get their energy from renewable sources. And they're still using the same grid and everything. It's a little bit more expensive, but they had that option. And she paid more to make sure that all of her electricity was coming from renewable sources. And I love that. She's demanding that of her companies, and the companies are changing.
That is a great story that you shared about your sister, because that is the two behavior changes that I'm talking about. So, do you know why sustainability has not seen so much change in the past 2 decades that it is seeing now? It is because sustainable being sustainable at an industrial scale, or maybe at any scale, is pricey. So
Yeah.
in industry, if you are trying to be more sustainable, um, you have to spend more to make sure the recycling is right, make sure the sorting is right and manufacturing is right. you have to spend more as a company. So where does that cost trickles down to? It trickles down to the customer. And this behavior change of being more holding yourself more accountable towards the environment and towards the sustainability, being more responsible towards it, now the customers are willing to pay more to be able to do that. So that is how like all of that translates into a consumer behavior. Now the companies can actually spend that money, and then the consumer would be willing to pay. That's one. And then the other one, the uncertainty aspect. People want to go back to certainty, but they also are thinking about living their lives today. That is another behavior shift that is causing consumers to pay more today to live their life better today, because we don't know about tomorrow. So all of these are signals that can be used in the front end of starting any project. So coming back to a full circle, the fuzzy front end is utilizing all these types of human behavior and um, behavior change that we are seeing.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's an interesting point. We've seen that on pre-launch as well. 4 or 5 years ago, there were products that had a sustainable bent to it, but they cost more than their competitors because of that sustainability factor. People weren't buying them. But even in these 4 or 5 years that we've been around, we see now that people are willing to pay more for that sustainability factor, environmental factor. So what's one book or resource that every innovator should read?
Start with design of everyday things to understand what it is when we are talking about human values, needs, and aspirations. That's a great book to understand the design at its core. It's by Don Norman. That's the book.
Great. Don Norman, Design of Everyday Things, link in the description. We've mentioned a lot of buzzwords today. What's the most overrated buzzword for you right now in innovation?
Design thinking.
Yeah.
I know there's and it has become such an overused buzzword that people have started writing hate articles about it. So even though it's highly valuable, but it is one of the most used buzzword. Oh, I have two. AI.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I thought you were going to lead with. If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing? Architecture?
If I was not doing any of this, architecture also wouldn't have been in the scene, because then I wouldn't have been doing design. It would be some sort of creative domain. Like, it's hard to think that I wouldn't be a designer, because it has been such a, like, from an early age I've been thinking about like improving things and solving problems. And, and that's what design is about. Maybe acting. I
Oh,
love acting.
nice.
So maybe I would be doing that.
And so building on this, like looking at how things could be improved, what's a product that you wish you would have invented?
Oh, that's a good one. Electric cars.
Nice, good one. And what's the biggest lesson you've learned from failure?
Failure is part of the journey, and consistency is what gets you over it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Harsh. This was an amazing conversation. There was so much like interesting things to go over. I'm gonna have tons of fun editing it. I'm sure everybody watching it is gonna have tons of fun. And I can't wait to have you back and explore this using AI and design thinking to innovate. I'm very excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. A fun conversation, worth the wait that we had to get to this, and excited for the next one. Thank you again.
Amazing. Thank you. Bye. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today for another Innovation Impossible story. I hope you enjoyed the insights and all the practical advice as much as I did. Please give us a like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. We're just starting out, and like innovating, this feels impossible. And head on over to YouTube and let us know if anything resonated with you or if you completely disagreed with anything, and we can spark some healthy debate into the world of innovation and insights. Thanks again to our sponsor, prelaunch.com, our guests for joining, and you for listening today. And see you again in a couple of weeks.